The silvery spires of Neo-Saigon pierced the morning sky as Dr. Lam Kai gazed through the panoramic windows of the Time Research Institute. The year 2137 hummed with technological marvels that his ancestors could scarcely have imagined. Quantum computing had revolutionized society. Space tourism was commonplace. And now humanity stood at the precipice of perhaps its greatest frontier, the conscious manipulation of time itself. Kai adjusted the collar of his research uniform, a sleek, graphene-infused fabric that regulated body temperature and monitored vital signs. At 42, he was considered young for his position as lead quantum physicist at the Institute. But his brilliance had propelled him forward. His slender fingers, stained slightly from recent chemical experiments, tapped impatiently against the transparent display floating before him. Consciousness, Interface Experiment 37, he murmured to the empty laboratory. Preparations complete. The experiment had been his obsession for 3 years. The theory was revolutionary, yet deceptively simple. If quantum particles could be entangled across vast distances in space, perhaps consciousness itself, a quantum phenomenon by some theories, could be entangled across time. Today's test was designed to send a simple thought pattern into the past, creating a minuscule ripple in the consciousness stream that specialized detectors might capture. The laboratory door slid open with a soft hiss, admitting Trondieu, his programming colleague. Her typically neat appearance was marred by dark circles under her eyes. "You look like you've been awake all night," Kai observed, not unkindly. "The AI interface needed recalibration," she replied, placing a small crystal cube on the central console. "But it's ready now. The quantum field stabilizers are at optimal capacity, and the consciousness receptors are calibrated to the highest sensitivity we've ever achieved." Kai nodded appreciatively. "The Oversight Committee only gave us this one chance. If we fail today, funding will be redirected to military applications." Dio's expression hardened. "Then we won't fail." The laboratory hummed to life as they activated the sequence. Holographic displays flickered around them, showing cascading equations and fluctuating energy patterns. At the center of the room, a cylindrical chamber began to glow with a soft blue light. "Initiating quantum consciousness projection in 3, 2, 1, Kai announced as he pressed his palm against the control interface. The blue light intensified, filling the chamber with what looked like liquid sapphire. The humming grew louder, and the building seemed to vibrate at a frequency just below human perception. "Quantum field stable," Dio reported. "Consciousness interface engaged." Kai closed his eyes, following protocol to project a simple pattern, a series of prime numbers that would be recognizable as artificially generated if detected in the past. He visualized the numbers flowing from his mind, carried on quantum waves through the barriers of time. Suddenly, the blue light flared blindingly. Warning alerts blared through the laboratory. "Field destabilization!" Dio shouted. "There's a feedback loop forming." Kai lunged for the emergency shutdown. But before he could reach it, a surge of energy knocked him backward. Pain lanced through his head, as if someone had driven a white-hot needle into his brain. His vision fractured into kaleidoscopic patterns, and he heard whispers, no, thoughts, that weren't his own. A woman's voice, confused and frightened. "What's happening to me? Who's there?" Then darkness claimed him. Lin Ann jerked awake at her desk, knocking over a cold cup of coffee. The apartment around her was dark except for the blue glow of her computer screen, displaying the half-finished manuscript she'd been working on before dozing off. The digital clock on her wall displayed 3:27 a.m., June 15th, 2025. Ordinary early morning in Saigon, except for the extraordinary headache pulsing behind her eyes and the lingering sensation that someone had been speaking directly into her mind. "I need to stop drinking coffee so late," she muttered, rubbing her temples. Anne was 28, a freelance writer whose modestly successful novels allowed her to maintain this small apartment in the old quarter of Saigon. The neighborhood was a curious blend of ancient and modern. Centuries-old temples stood alongside sleek cafes. Traditional market stalls operated in the shadows of rising condominiums. She stood up, stretching her stiff back, and padded to the bathroom. As she splashed cold water on her face, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Almond eyes, now bloodshot from exhaustion, shoulder-length black hair disheveled from sleep. But something seemed different, as if she were seeing herself through someone else's eyes. A flash of memory that wasn't hers. Looking down at slender hands, stained with chemicals, pressing them against a glowing surface, feeling the hum of powerful machinery. Anne gasped and stepped back from the mirror. The foreign memory faded as quickly as it had come, leaving her wondering if she was still half dreaming. Yet the lingering sensation remained, a presence in her mind, like the ghost of a conversation half remembered. She returned to her desk and stared at her manuscript. She had been writing a science fiction story about time travel, but now the words seemed childishly naive compared to what? Knowledge she didn't remember acquiring? Experiences she had never had? Anne opened a new document and began typing rapidly, words flowing from her fingers without conscious thought. Equations and concepts she had no business understanding filled the screen. Quantum entanglement theories, consciousness transfer protocols, something called temporal bridge stabilization. When she finally stopped typing and read what she had written, fear gripped her. These weren't just random words or the product of an overactive imagination. This was advanced physics, far beyond her liberal arts education. This was knowledge she couldn't possibly possess. "Who are you?" she whispered to the empty room. "What's happening to me?" In the Institute's medical bay, Kai regained consciousness slowly. The sterile white ceiling came into focus, followed by Dieu's concerned face. "You've been unconscious for 6 hours," she informed him. "The experiment." "Failed," Kai finished for her, struggling to sit up. "Or did it? I experienced someone. Your brainwave patterns were extraordinary," Dieu confirmed. "Unlike anything we've recorded before, the quantum field collapsed, but not before creating what appears to be a stable entanglement. The question is, entanglement with what? Or whom?" Kai's head throbbed with residual pain, but beneath it lay a peculiar awareness, faint impressions of a different life, a different time, a small apartment, the smell of coffee, a computer screen displaying a half-finished story. "I think," he said slowly, "I made contact with someone in the past. A woman, a writer." "That's impossible," Dieu said automatically, then hesitated. "Isn't it? We were attempting to send a simple pattern, not establish full consciousness connection. The feedback loop must have amplified the signal far beyond our parameters," Kai theorized. "Instead of sending information one way, it created a quantum bridge between two conscious minds." He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, ignoring the medical sensor's protests. "I need to get back to the lab. If I'm right, this isn't just a breakthrough. It's a revolution. The Oversight Committee has already been informed of the equipment failure," Dieu cautioned. "Director Nguyen wants to see you as soon as you're recovered." Kai grimaced. Director Nguyen represented the Institute's bureaucratic side, more concerned with metrics and funding than scientific discovery. "Tell her I'll report in 2 hours. First, I need to analyze the data from today's experiment." Back in the laboratory, Kai reviewed the recordings of the quantum field fluctuations. The patterns were unlike anything in their previous 36 experiments. More organic, almost like the wave patterns of human thought. "Computer, cross-reference these patterns with historical brainwave recordings," he instructed. "Pattern match found." The AI responded almost immediately. 93% correlation with deep REM sleep wave patterns recorded in early 21st century sleep studies. Kai's excitement grew. "And the temporal displacement calculation? Based on quantum field resonance, The estimated temporal connection point is June 15th, 2025. The date struck Kai with the force of revelation. Over a century in the past, a time long before consciousness, interface technology, before neural implants and quantum mind theory, whoever he had connected with would have no framework to understand what was happening. He closed his eyes, trying to recapture the fleeting impressions he'd experienced during the connection. The woman's confusion and fear were understandable, but beneath that had been a quick intelligence, a creative mind that might be able to comprehend the impossible. Kai made a decision. Rather than reporting the failure to Director Nguyen, he would attempt to re-establish the connection, this time consciously and with purpose. If he could communicate with this person across time, the possibilities were limitless. He adjusted the parameters of the quantum field generator, recalibrating it to match the unique signature of the accidental connection. This wasn't science anymore. It was intuition, following the ghost of a link that shouldn't exist. Consciousness interface engaging, he murmured as he activated the system. Find her again. The blue light enveloped him, gentler this time. Kai closed his eyes and projected a simple thought into the quantum field. I am Dr. Lam Kai, quantum physicist. Year 2137, can you hear me? Anne hadn't slept. After the strange episode, she had spent the rest of the night researching the equations and theories she had inexplicably written. Much of it aligned with cutting-edge quantum physics, but some concepts were so advanced that no reference to them existed in any scientific journal or database she could access. Morning light filtered through her window as she paced the small apartment, talking to herself. Either I'm having some kind of breakdown, or... She couldn't bring herself to complete the thought. The alternative was too fantastic. The headache returned suddenly, a pressure behind her eyes that made her wince. Then came the voice, not audible, but clear in her mind. I am Dr. Lam Kai, quantum physicist. Year 2137, can you hear me? Anne froze mid-step. The voice was male, tinged with an accent she couldn't place, like Vietnamese but with subtle differences, as if language itself had evolved. I'm hallucinating, she whispered. This isn't real. It is real, the voice responded. This is a quantum consciousness connection across temporal distance. Your mind and mine have become entangled. Anne sank into her desk chair. If I'm having a conversation with a voice in my head, I'm definitely having a breakdown. Try this, the voice suggested. Think of a number, any number, but don't tell me. I'll try to perceive it through our connection. Despite her skepticism, and thought of her mother's birth year, 1973. 1973, the voice stated confidently. A significant year to you, family-related? Anne's heart raced. This is impossible. Who are you really? How are you doing this? As I said, I'm Dr. Lam Kai. I'm conducting an experiment at the Time Research Institute in Neo-Saigon, year 2137. An accident during our consciousness projection test created an unexpected entanglement between our minds across time. Neo-Saigon? 2137? Anne laughed weakly. This sounds like something from one of my novels. You're a writer? The voice, Kai, seemed genuinely interested. That makes sense. Creative minds are often more quantum receptive, more able to process nonlinear thought patterns. So you're saying you're from the future, and somehow our minds are connected? And struggled with the concept. Precisely. Quantum entanglement isn't limited by space or time. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. In my time, we've developed the technology to manipulate quantum states of consciousness, though this particular result was unintended. I need proof, Anne insisted. Tell me something about the future that I couldn't possibly know. That's problematic, Kai replied. If I tell you major events, it could potentially alter the timeline, but I can share scientific advancements that would be verifiable, but not disruptive. Kai proceeded to describe quantum computing breakthroughs that were theoretical in Anne's time but, according to him, would be confirmed within 5 years. He explained neural interface technology that would revolutionize medicine, entertainment, and communication. He described Neo-Saigon, a floating city built to withstand the rising sea levels that would threaten coastal regions in the coming decades. The specificity and consistency of his descriptions slowly eroded Anne's skepticism. This wasn't like any hallucination she had ever heard described. Too coherent, too detailed, and too aligned with current scientific trajectories. "Let's say I believe you," she finally said. "What happens now? Why are we connected like this?" "I'm not certain," Kai admitted. "The connection was accidental, but now that it exists, I believe we should explore it. This could be the most significant discovery in human history, proof that consciousness can transcend time itself." "But why me? I'm not a scientist. I write fiction." "Perhaps that's exactly why. Your mind is accustomed to imagining the impossible. And perhaps there's something about our specific neural patterns that made this connection possible. In quantum mechanics, nothing is truly random. Everything happens for a reason, even if we can't immediately discern it." Anne ran her fingers through her hair, mind racing with questions and possibilities. "So, what do we do? Just talk to each other telepathically across 100 years? For now, yes. I need to study this phenomenon, understand how it works and how to stabilize it. And perhaps we can learn from each other. Your perspective from 2025 could provide valuable insights into historical turning points my society has forgotten." "And what about my life? Am I supposed to just go about my business with a voice from the future in my head?" "I understand your concern," Kai responded, his mental voice softening. "I promise to respect your privacy and only connect when it's agreeable to you. We can establish parameters, designated times for communication." Anne found herself smiling despite the absurdity of the situation. "I must be crazy to be considering this. But, okay, let's try to understand what's happening." "Thank you," Kai replied, and Anne could sense his genuine gratitude across the impossible connection. "I believe there's a purpose to our entanglement, something important we're meant to discover together." "Well, Dr. Lam Kai from the future," Anne said with a nervous laugh, "I guess we're about to make history, or maybe transcend it." Over the following weeks, Kai and Anne developed a routine. At designated times, Kai would activate the quantum consciousness interface at the Institute, establishing the connection with Anne across time. Their exchanges grew longer and more substantial as they became accustomed to the strange intimacy of shared thoughts. Kai learned that Anne lived alone, having moved away from her family's traditional expectations to pursue her writing career. Her novels, while not bestsellers, had earned her a devoted following and enough income to maintain her independence. She was intelligent, curious, and possessed a philosophical depth that surprised him. Anne, in turn, discovered that Kai had dedicated his life to science after losing his parents in a climate disaster as a teenager. His work at the Institute was driven by more than academic curiosity. He genuinely believed that understanding time could help humanity avoid the catastrophic mistakes of the past. What neither expected was how the connection would deepen over time. It wasn't just thoughts they shared, but emotions and memories. During one session, Anne suddenly found herself experiencing Kai's childhood memory of flying kites on the beaches of Neo-Saigon. Another time, Kai felt Anne's exhilaration as she received her first book contract. These experiences were more than telepathy. They were moments of complete empathic immersion, as if their very souls were temporarily merging. "Is this normal?" Anne asked during one connection. "This level of sharing?" "No," Kai admitted. "According to our theories, consciousness transfer should be limited to directed thoughts, not spontaneous memory exchange. The entanglement between us appears to be strengthening, becoming more comprehensive. Is that dangerous? And couldn't help the flutter of anxiety that accompanied the question. I don't believe so, Kai reassured her. But it is unprecedented. I've been developing a theory about quantum resonance points, locations in space-time where our connection might be particularly strong. He explained that certain places might serve as anchors for their connection, where the quantum entanglement could be stabilized and perhaps even enhanced. Like what exactly? Anne asked. In my research, I've discovered that the site where the Institute now stands was once a temple in your time. The exact coordinates would be in the old quarter, near where you live. Anne was intrigued. I know several temples in that area. I could visit them, see if I notice anything unusual. If my theory is correct, you might experience a stronger connection to me in that location, perhaps even without the aid of the quantum interface on my end. The experiment was set for the following day. Anne would visit the temple Kai described, while he monitored quantum fluctuations from the future. The temple was smaller than Anne had expected, nestled between newer buildings like a defiant relic of the past. Red and gold decorations adorned its facade, and incense smoke created a hazy atmosphere within. As she stepped through the entrance, Anne felt an immediate change, a humming sensation at the base of her skull, a lightness in her chest. Can you hear me? Kai's thought came through with startling clarity, though he hadn't been scheduled to initiate contact for hours. Yes, Anne whispered, earning a curious glance from an elderly woman lighting incense nearby. You're so clear, like you're standing next to me. The quantum readings are extraordinary, Kai reported excitedly. This confirms my theory. Certain locations serve as natural bridges across time. The molecular structure of this site must have remained relatively consistent across the centuries, creating a kind of quantum echo. Anne moved deeper into the temple, finding that the connection strengthened as she approached the central altar. It's not just hearing you, she murmured. I can almost see through your eyes. For a disorienting moment, her vision split, the ancient temple overlaid with holographic displays and futuristic equipment. Kai's laboratory had been built directly above this spot, creating a perfect alignment across time. The discovery of the transition point, as they came to call it, was a breakthrough. With this natural amplifier, their communication became more reliable and comprehensive. Kai could now share complex scientific concepts more effectively, and Anne could convey her perspective on life in the early 21st century with greater nuance. But their progress did not go unnoticed. In his timeline, Kai's colleagues at the Institute began to question his solitary work and unusual equipment requests. Director Nguyen called him to her office one afternoon, her expression severe. Dr. Lam, the Oversight Committee is concerned about your recent activities, she stated without preamble. You've been conducting unauthorized experiments, redirecting resources, and filing misleading reports. Kai maintained a neutral expression. My work has taken an unexpected direction, but I assure you the potential benefits. We've been monitoring your quantum field generation, Nguyen interrupted. The patterns suggest you're attempting consciousness projection, not just into the past, but to a specific recipient. This violates multiple research protocols. With respect, Director, we're on the verge of the most significant breakthrough in the Institute's history. I've established consistent communication with a subject in the early 21st century. Nguyen's eyes widened momentarily before narrowing in suspicion. That's impossible. Our theories indicate that stable consciousness connection across such temporal distance would require quantum resonance points, Kai finished. Yes, I've discovered them. The connection is stable, consistent, and expanding our understanding of consciousness itself. Who is this supposed connection? A scientist? A historical figure of significance? A writer named Lin An, Her creative mind made her receptive to the quantum bridge. Nguyen rose from her desk, her voice hardening. Dr. Lam, the Time Preservation Organization has already filed concerns about your work. They believe any manipulation of the temporal consciousness stream could have catastrophic consequences for the timeline. The Time Preservation Organization, a quasi-governmental body dedicated to preventing temporal interference, had opposed the Institute's research from the beginning. Their influence had grown as climate crises and political upheavals made people increasingly fearful of altering the past. They don't understand what we've achieved, Kai argued. This isn't about changing history. It's about connecting with it, learning from it. You have 2 weeks to prepare a full presentation for the Oversight Committee, Nguyen declared. If you cannot prove both the validity and safety of your connection, your project will be terminated, and all records sealed under temporal security protocols. As Kai left the director's office, he reached instinctively for Anne's consciousness, forgetting that she wouldn't be at the temple transition point. To his surprise, a faint response came. Kai, what's wrong? I can feel your distress. The connection was weaker than at the temple, but it existed nonetheless. Their entanglement had grown strong enough to bridge time, even without the quantum interface or the resonance point. We may have a problem, he admitted. My superiors are questioning the project. There's a group here called the Time Preservation Organization that believes any contact with the past is dangerous. That sounds ominous, Anne replied. I'm having issues of my own. My father visited yesterday. He's worried about my strange behavior lately. Anne explained that her father, a practical businessman, had noticed her distraction, her tendency to pause mid-conversation as if listening to someone else, her sudden interest in quantum physics. He had suggested she see a doctor, concerned she might be experiencing early signs of mental illness. What did you tell him? Kai asked. The truth. Actually, Anne replied with a mental equivalent of a wry smile. That I'm in contact with a scientist from the future. He thinks I'm either working on a new novel or having a breakdown. I'm sorry to be causing complications in your life. Don't be. Anne responded firmly. This connection, whatever it is, feels important. Not just for science, but personally. I've never experienced anything like this sense of understanding, of being completely known by another person. Kai felt an unexpected warmth at her words. What had begun as scientific curiosity had evolved into something profoundly meaningful. The quantum entanglement had created more than a bridge between minds. It had formed a connection between souls. We'll find a way forward, he promised, in both our times. As pressure mounted in both timelines, Kai and Anne increased their efforts to understand and strengthen their connection. Kai worked feverishly to prepare his presentation for the Oversight Committee, gathering data on the quantum bridge's stability and potential applications, and visited the temple daily, keeping a detailed journal of her experiences and the knowledge transferred across time. During one such session at the temple, an experience the most profound sharing yet, a complete immersion in Kai's consciousness that lasted nearly 30 minutes. When she returned to herself, shaking and disoriented, she found she had written pages of equations and diagrams that detailed a consciousness synchronization interface. What is this? She asked Kai, when their connection stabilized. It appears to be a blueprint, he replied, studying the images through her eyes. A method to stabilize and enhance our connection using technology available in your time. But this is far beyond anything we have now, Anne protested, looking at the complex circuit designs. Not entirely. The components exist, just not for this purpose. The quantum entanglement is guiding your hand, transferring knowledge across time. This device would serve as an anchor point in your timeline, strengthening our bridge. The implications were staggering. If they could build such a device, it would be tangible proof of their connection, proof that Anne could show others. validating both her experience and Kai's research. "I'll need help," and decided, someone with technical skills who won't immediately dismiss this as insanity, and approached Professor Min, a retired physicist who frequented the same cafe where she often wrote. The elderly academic had always shown interest in her science fiction novels, praising her imaginative approach to theoretical concepts. If anyone might be open to the impossible, it would be him. To her surprise, Professor Min didn't immediately reject her story. After examining the diagrams, he peered at her over his spectacles with keen interest. "Either you've become a quantum physics savant overnight," he said, "or something extraordinary is happening. These concepts integrate theoretical frameworks that haven't even been published yet. They're still confined to research labs. Will you help me build it?" Anne asked directly. The professor smiled. "My dear, at my age, the chance to participate in something truly revolutionary is irresistible. Of course I'll help." Over the next week, they gathered the components: specialized microprocessors, quantum-sensitive materials, precisely calibrated sensors. Some had to be specially ordered, raising eyebrows with their unusual specifications. Anne emptied her savings account to fund the project, believing completely in its importance. Meanwhile, in 2137, Kai faced increasing resistance. The Time Preservation Organization had placed a representative in his laboratory, a stern woman named Mai, who monitored his every action and reported back to her superiors. "The organization believes your experiment threatens the integrity of the timeline," Mai informed him bluntly. "Consciousness transference could create paradoxes or alternative branches of reality." "That's theoretical at best," Kai countered. "Our connection has existed for weeks with no detectable temporal anomalies." "That you know of," Mai replied coldly. "Ripple effects may take time to manifest." Despite the surveillance, Kai continued his research, carefully documenting every aspect of the quantum bridge. The connection with Anne had become more than a scientific breakthrough. It had become essential to him, a relationship unlike any he had known before. The day before his presentation to the Oversight Committee, Kai made a startling discovery while reviewing historical records. A book published in 2026 by author Lin An, titled Quantum Souls, described a connection between a woman in the 21st century and a scientist from the future named Kai. The implications were dizzying. Had their connection always been part of the timeline? Was it a predestined event that would have occurred regardless of his experiments? Or had their interaction created a new branch of reality, one where Anne published their story? And he projected during their next connection, "I found something remarkable. You write a book about us." "I've actually started outlining it," she admitted. "It helps me process what's happening, but I haven't decided if I'll publish it." "According to my records, you do publish it next year. It's considered fiction, of course, but it accurately describes our connection." Anne was silent for a moment, absorbing this information. "So this was always meant to happen? We were always destined to connect?" "Perhaps," Kai replied. "Or perhaps our connection itself created the conditions for the book to exist. Temporal causality becomes circular in cases like ours." "Does this help your case with the committee?" "It might. It suggests our connection is a stable part of the timeline, not a dangerous deviation." The night before Kai's presentation, Anne and Professor Min completed the consciousness synchronization device. It was smaller than Anne had expected, about the size of a book, with a crystalline center surrounded by intricate circuitry. "If this works as your equations suggest," the professor said, "it will revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, time, and quantum mechanics. Are you ready to test it?" Anne nodded, placing her hands on the designated sensors. Kai will be monitoring from his end. The device hummed to life, its crystal core beginning to glow with a soft blue light, reminiscent of the quantum field Kai had described. And closed her eyes, focusing on their connection. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. rather than the partial connection they had maintained before. This was a complete immersion, and could see the Institute's laboratory as clearly as if she were standing there. Could feel the weight of Kai's body as if it were her own. His thoughts flowed alongside hers, distinct yet intimately connected. It works, they thought simultaneously, their amazement echoing across time. For a precious few minutes, they existed in perfect quantum harmony, two consciousnesses from different centuries, merged into a shared experience that transcended the limitations of time and space. Then alarms began to blare in Kai's laboratory. Red warning lights flashed, and holographic displays showed dangerous fluctuations in the quantum field. "What's happening?" Mai demanded, rushing to the control console. "The quantum bridge is expanding beyond predicted parameters," Kai explained, trying to maintain the connection while monitoring the fluctuations. "The synchronization device in 2025 has amplified the signal exponentially." Mai's face hardened. "Shut it down. Now." This is exactly what the organization warned against, an uncontrolled temporal disruption. "Give me a minute to stabilize the connection," Kai pleaded. "This is breakthrough data." 30 seconds, Mai conceded, her hand hovering over the emergency shutdown. Through their connection, and witnessed the confrontation. "The device is causing problems in your time," she observed. "Should I deactivate it?" "Not yet," Kai urged. "I need to capture these readings. This proves the viability of cross-temporal consciousness bridging." But the quantum field continued to destabilize. Warning systems indicated that the temporal fabric itself was beginning to warp around the laboratory, creating what the displays labeled a consciousness echo chamber, a dangerous feedback loop between past and future. 10 seconds, Mai warned, her finger now poised above the shutdown button. "Kai, something's wrong," and projected urgently. "The device is getting hot and I'm feeling strange, like I'm being pulled apart." The crystal, at the center of the synchronization device, had begun to pulse erratically, and Anne felt a terrifying sensation, as if her very consciousness was being stretched between 2 points in time, unable to fully exist in either. In the laboratory, Kai experienced the same disorientation. The quantum field had created a consciousness vortex, drawing their entangled minds into a state of temporal flux. "Shut down now!" Mai shouted, slamming her hand onto the emergency control. But it was too late. The quantum field had become self-sustaining, feeding on the powerful connection between Kai and Anne's consciousnesses. Shutdown protocols failed as the system overrode safety measures, drawing more power to maintain the expanding bridge. "The field is collapsing in on itself," Kai realized with horror. "It's creating a temporal singularity centered on our consciousness link." Through their connection, he felt Anne's fear mirroring his own. If the singularity formed completely, it could potentially destroy both their minds, or worse, trap their consciousnesses in an endless loop between time frames, neither fully alive nor dead. "There's only one way to break the cycle," Kai announced, pushing Mai aside to access the main control interface. "I have to sever the quantum entanglement at its source." "Kai, what are you doing?" Anne's thought came through fragmented, distorted by the destabilizing field. "The only thing I can," he replied, initiating a quantum field inversion. "I'm going to collapse the bridge from my end. It should release your consciousness back to your time." "But what will happen to you?" "Best case. My consciousness returns to normal after a brief disruption. Worst case." He didn't complete the thought, but understood. The severing of their entanglement could damage his mind irreparably. "There has to be another way," and protested, her mental voice growing fainter as the connection deteriorated. "Listen to me," Kai projected with all his remaining strength. "Whatever happens, know that this connection, what we've shared, has been the most meaningful experience of my life. Across a century of time, our souls found each other. That's a miracle that transcends science. In her timeline, and wept as she felt Kai's determination. Through their failing connection, she realized he was preparing to sacrifice himself to save her, to preserve her consciousness intact. "No," she whispered aloud, startling Professor Min, who had been watching the experiment with growing concern. "I won't let him do this alone." Anne placed her hands firmly on the synchronization device, even as it grew painfully hot beneath her fingers. Focusing every ounce of her will, she initiated the shutdown sequence from her end. Voluntary synchronization, she projected to Kai, together or not at all. For a brief, transcendent moment, their consciousnesses aligned in perfect harmony, not fighting the quantum collapse but embracing it, guiding it toward a controlled dissolution rather than a catastrophic rupture. The blue light flared blindingly in both timeframes, then winked out completely. In the temple in 2025, Anne collapsed beside the now dark synchronization device, Professor Min rushing to her side in alarm. In the laboratory in 2137, Kai slumped against the control console as emergency systems finally managed to contain the quantum field collapse. Silence fell across both timelines as the bridge between them dissolved into quantum possibility. Anne awoke in a hospital bed, the sterile white ceiling swimming into focus as her consciousness settled back into her body. Her father sat beside her, his normally stern face etched with worry. "You're awake," he said, relief evident in his voice. "The doctor said you experienced some kind of seizure. Professor Min brought you in." Anne's mind felt strangely empty, hollowed out. The constant presence she had grown accustomed to, Kai's consciousness lingering at the edges of her awareness, was gone. "How long have I been here?" she asked, her throat dry. "Almost 2 days," her father replied. "What happened, Anne?" "Professor Min mentioned some kind of experiment, but he wouldn't elaborate." Anne closed her eyes, searching her memory. The connection, the synchronization device, the quantum collapse. It all seemed like a dream now, fading at the edges. Had any of it been real? Or had she experienced some kind of breakdown? Her writer's imagination constructing an elaborate fantasy? "I'm not sure," she answered honestly. "I need time to process it." Over the following days, as Anne recovered her strength, she tried repeatedly to reach out with her mind, searching for any trace of the quantum bridge, any whisper of Kai's consciousness. There was nothing but silence. The synchronization device had burned out completely, its crystal center shattered from the strain. Professor Min had salvaged what components he could, but the blueprints Anne had drawn seemed incomprehensible now, as if written in a language she no longer spoke. "Perhaps it was simply ahead of its time," the professor suggested gently, when he visited her apartment after her release from the hospital. "Some discoveries must wait until the world is ready for them." Anne nodded, but part of her refused to accept that the connection was truly gone. She began writing feverishly, capturing every detail of her experience with Kai before memory could erode it further. The book took shape rapidly, part science fiction, part memoir, part love letter across time. She titled it Quantum Souls, and when it was published the following year, it was received as an imaginative work of speculative fiction. Only Anne knew it was much more. In 2137, Kai recovered more slowly. The quantum field collapse had affected him more severely, requiring neural regeneration therapy to repair the damage to his consciousness patterns. When he finally returned to the institute, he found his laboratory sealed, his research classified under temporal security protocols. The Oversight Committee has determined that consciousness projection poses unacceptable risks to temporal stability, Director Nguyen informed him during his reinstatement meeting. The Time Preservation Organization now has veto authority over all time-related research. "They're wrong," Kai stated flatly. "What we discovered wasn't a danger. It was a breakthrough in understanding consciousness itself." "Perhaps," Nguyen conceded. But after the quantum singularity event, no one is willing to take that risk again. Your new assignment focuses on practical applications of quantum field theory for present-time use only. Kai accepted the reassignment, but privately, he continued to analyze the data from his connection with Anne. The quantum bridge had collapsed, but the memories remained, the sharing of thoughts, emotions, and experiences that had created a bond transcending time itself. Most intriguing was a historical anomaly he discovered during his research. A book titled Quantum Souls by author Lin An, published in 2026, had become a cult classic in literary circles. According to the records, it had inspired generations of scientists and philosophers to reconsider the nature of consciousness and time. Among those influenced by the book was a young physics student who would later develop the first theoretical framework for consciousness projection, the very technology that had allowed Kai to establish the connection in the first place. The circular causality was breathtaking. Had their connection created the conditions for its own existence? Had they been participating in a temporal loop that was always meant to occur? One evening, Kai visited the ancient temple that now stood in the shadow of the institute. The structure had been preserved as a historical landmark, its basic architecture unchanged despite the centuries that had passed, standing in the exact spot where Anne had once stood. Kai closed his eyes and reached out with his consciousness, not through technology this time, but through sheer will and the quantum memory of connection. For a brief moment, he felt something, not the full bridge they had once shared, but a whisper across time, like an echo lingering long after the original sound had faded. "Anne," he projected into the quantum void. "Are you there?" No response came, yet Kai smiled. The connection had changed him forever, expanding his understanding beyond the rigid confines of scientific materialism. Consciousness, he now believed, was more than neural patterns and quantum states. It was something profound that could reach across the very fabric of time itself. Perhaps, in some way, all human connections were forms of quantum entanglement, souls recognizing each other across the artificial boundaries of space and time. Anne visited the temple on the anniversary of the connection's collapse, carrying a copy of her published book. The small shrine had become a special place for her, a location where the veil between times felt thinnest. As she sat in quiet meditation, a strange sensation washed over her, not the full consciousness sharing she had experienced with Kai, but a gentle resonance, like the faint vibration of a plucked string. "Anne, are you there?" The thought was so faint she might have imagined it, a memory rather than a communication. Yet it filled her with warmth and certainty. "I'm here," she whispered aloud. "Always." No response came, but she didn't need one. The quantum entanglement of their souls had transcended the collapse of the bridge. Though they existed in different centuries, their connection remained, subtler now, but unbroken. Anne opened her book to the dedication page she had written. "For K, across time, consciousness, and quantum possibility, some connections are eternal." As the setting sun cast golden light through the temple windows, Anne looked up at the stars, just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere, in the distant future, she knew, Kai was looking at those same stars. Time and space might separate them, but quantum entanglement had taught them the truth. Souls that have truly connected are never really apart, no matter what centuries lie between them.